inferential reasoning and minimally counterintuitive worlds. We fill in the blanks where the information isn't always there. That's what inferential reasoning is. This serves as the basis for minimally counterintuitive worlds. So if you understand spelling and grammatical errors in text messages, for example, you're doing what's described here. Like, you may see spelling and grammar errors, but you can piece together in your mind what the person was trying to say. The example he has in the book is there's a picture. It clearly looks like a clover, but with this white square in the middle. But you can tell it's a clover because you know what a clover looks like. So your mind is sort of filling in the gaps where it's where you don't actually see it. So, but for this to work, it only works if a small element or two is a little off, but not way off. We can kind of piece it together. If the clover was more obscured, you would have no idea what it was. But if it's, okay, that little piece is missing, you can just piece together in your mind what that is. So minimally counterintuitive worlds are the optimal compromise in our minds between the interesting and the expected. These minimally counterintuitive worlds both seize our attention and stand out in our memories. So, for example, the example he gives in the book is that if you were to say to somebody, even a completely mystical person, there's an all-powerful oak tree in your yard. It'll perform all the tasks you want. It'll do your taxes. It'll wash your car. It'll talk to you. All this, you see that's too much of a stretch because it violates too many aspects of what a tree is. Whereas if you think of something, the example, he didn't mention this, but I thought of it, Grandmother Willow from Pocahontas, that's a little more of a less of a jump, because if you think about it, a tree blowing in the wind, there's a carving that could look like a face. They could think that's some sort of spirit. Pocahontas can assign in her mind some sort of voice that it's being attached to when it could really be her own internal reasoning, things like that. It's less of a jump than the oak tree example that I cited. So then you could believe that, all right, this is some spirit embodied, and then during a full moon, if I pray to it, it'll help me in some way. It's less of a jump to do that than the oak tree example. So then think of some of the fairy tales you hear as a kid, like I mentioned in a previous discussion about St. George slaying the dragon, and I remember in CCD kids asking, like, did dragons actually exist? It's like, well, if you believe in all this other stuff, a dragon is not a huge jump. It's a similar thing here. And then same thing with some of the fairy tale stuff, like, okay, the witch from Snow White just drinks a potion and turns into a creature, but it's like, you don't have to a child is not going to think through, wait a minute, could a person's bones and everything reshape themselves? It's like, it's too convoluted. Whereas in a child's mind and a religious person's mind too, it's easier to make that jump. So it's close enough to reality where we can make that jump, but it's not completely beyond the pale. So minimally counterintuitive worlds allow the supernatural to remain connected to the natural world. They also provide explanations and relief for human problems that are rationally intractable, such as death. So think of the ancient Egyptians worshiping cats and seeing snakes as evil and the cause of problems. So, for example, there was the cat goddess Bastet versus Apop, who was the serpent god. Now, cats were good because they killed mice in the granaries, their companions, all that. So they're seen as very benevolent creatures, whereas snakes, of course, biting people, poison, all those things. So snakes are seen as evil. Now, another example here is the Virgin Mary conceived Christ while a virgin, but retained everything else. The Holy Spirit descended and made her conceive Jesus and then faded. That's less of a jump than if you had to break it down, like somehow a spirit came in and did this with her and all that. Like, it's too much of a jump. Whereas if you believe in the Holy Spirit, it's less of a jump for a person to conceive that. So the Christian God is omnipotent, omnipresent, but otherwise he resembles a human. The old white guy in the bathrobe, it's something we can relate to. So think of Jesus being portrayed as both a man and a god. And there was a movie, the one Jesus came out, and I think it was 99 or so. One of the reasons that movie got a lot of praise was because it was a more human view of Jesus, like crying at his father's funeral. He enjoyed partying with his friends, like a more a humanized version of Jesus. And that was, it resonated with audience because it's something more people can relate to rather than this like oracle just reciting text up on a mountain. It's, here's this being that can sort of relate to us, but at the same time is still a divine being.
Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Pendants. 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 Pendants.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.